So it's finally time. Last year I was awarded an MA in Linguistics, and let me tell you, it was a bumpy ride. But today's video is about a specific part of that journey, the most fun and most rewarding part. I wrote a research paper in which I discussed language creation. Not just any language construction though. I constructed a language for Marvel's Wakanda. Wakanda forever! Wakanda forever! But before we get into it, here's a word from my sponsor. This video is sponsored by, well, me. My debut novelette, Nsibeasts, Forgotten Bonds, is available on Amazon. It's an Afro-fantasy story inspired by a lot of the anime I watched growing up. Give it a read and let me know what you think. The link is in the description. So in case you don't know, the Black Panther film was released during Black History Month in 2018, around 4 years ago. I'm not going to lie, the MCU was my first introduction to this character and the lore surrounding him, which is sad because there's a lot of interesting stuff to Black Panther that movie-only people like me haven't been exposed to. In fact, I didn't even know about T'Challa until the 2016 film Captain America: Civil War. Anyway, I was about 2 years into my master's program when the movie came out, and since I was surrounded by linguists, the topic of how language was used in the movie came up. The language that they chose as the native language of Wakanda is
the Xhosa language. isiXhosa.
Ukuba uphinde wakuxhukumisa ndakuqoma apha kwesisihlalo.
Does she speak English?
When she wants to.
That took me by surprise because I assumed they just made up a language for the made-up nation of Wakanda. But more importantly,
isiXhosa
is a South African language, and Wakanda is in East Africa, near Uganda and Kenya. Considering how huge the continent of Africa is, and Wakanda's isolationist ideology, that makes zero sense to me. They chose this language because South African actor John Kani, who plays King T'Chaka in the MCU, speaks it.
And it was extra special for me because the people speak Xhosa in the movie. So, like, there were subtitles, and I was like, I don't need your subtitles. I don't need your subtitles. Get rid of the subtitles.
So, I sat on this for a while, letting it simmer in my brain, as ideas do. Meanwhile, an issue came up with my program. I needed to replace a few credits, and there were no available courses. The academic advice I got was to do a thesis. I did an MA in Linguistics, which does not require a thesis, but one would provide enough credits to make up for what I was lacking. I racked my brain for an idea. It had to be something that I was interested in, that I'd be sure to see through to the end. And finally, it hit me. Why not create a Wakandan language that would actually fit in with what we know about Wakanda? To be fair, the film wasn't trying to make it fit. From what I can tell, Wakanda isn't supposed to be realistic. As Lupita Nyongo, who plays Nakia in the film, says,
but it's drawing from ancient cultures on the continent very specifically. The diversity in this film is specifically from the continent, inspired by the continent, and like accelerated into a future.
In researching the Black Panther comics, I found lots of various references to cultures all over Africa. The most well-known example perhaps is the Egyptian goddess Bast, who is the patron goddess of Wakanda. There's also a spider-like species of beings called the Anansi that inhabited the region that would eventually become Wakanda. This of course is a reference to the trickster god of the Akan in Western Africa. And although this doesn't seem to translate from print to screen, the Dora Milaje of the comics speak Hausa, which is a language spoken in Nigeria, Chad, Benin and Cameroon. The Black Panther film continued this tradition, making various visual references to people and cultures from all over the continent. As a student linguist though, this just bugged me. Every time I thought of it, there was just something in me that kept saying, this makes no sense. isiXhosa is a South African language. I know what you're thinking. This is the MCU, where there's magic and spaceships and people that turn tiny so they can ride on ants, and that's what gets under your skin? Well, yeah, I never said I was normal. Anyway, as I was searching for a topic for my research paper, I randomly realized that I could scratch that itch and get some school credits at the same time, and thus my thesis was conceived. The idea behind my paper was, what would the Wakanda language look like if it followed the rules of real language evolution? A realistic Wakandan. In order for this to work, I had to set up a couple constraints for myself. 1. This created language had to have believably evolved from the languages in the region. 2. I had to find a way to linguistically account for as many words that exist in the lore as possible. This wasn't going to be easy, but let me tell you, it was fun. I won't get into all the details or this would be a very long and tedious video, but I will give you a small taste of the decisions I made and what I came up with. The first thing I had to do was choose the languages that would influence my language. And for that, I'd have to determine where exactly Wakanda is. Thankfully, the MCU and the comics helped with that. As I said before, Wakanda is around the Great Lakes region of East Africa. That narrowed down the area of possible language influence. With that foundation laid, I decided to have each of the original so-called tribes of Wakanda speak a language closely related to one other that could be found in the region. The border tribe's language is related to Lugungu. In my adapted lore, the Golden Tribe, the royal class, is a part of this group. And so, this language had the most influence on the language I was developing than any other. Like Lugungu, most of the other language influences would also be Bantu languages. The Merchant tribe's language is related to Luganda. The River tribe's language is related to Kikuyu. And the Mining tribe's language is related to Lumusaba. The only exception is the Jabari, whose language is related to a Nilotic language called Bari. I specifically made this decision to justify the name of the Jabari. For this video, I decided to focus on Wakandan cognates. A cognate is a word in a language that shares an origin with one in another language. For example, the English word brother and the Jamaican Creole or Patois word breda are cognates. In order to construct my Wakandan language, I chose some words that would have cognates in the real-world languages I mentioned above, but gave some of them different usages. For example, one goal I had going into this was to come up with an etymology for the name Wakanda. Choosing Bari as the inspiration for the Jabari's linguistic influence on the kingdom's language satisfied this. Based on the Bari word waken, which means escape, I had the Jabari call this picturesque landscape the escape, which ended up evolving into the name Wakanda. Anyway, as a sister of the Lugungu language, the Wakandan language is a Bantu language, specifically a Great Lakes Bantu language. That means that its nouns are divided into classes that are each marked by a specific prefix. The name of a language is marked by the prefix Lu, which gives you Luwakanda, the language of Wakanda. The word for one person is marked by Mu, which gives you Muwakanda, a Wakandan person. And the word for a group of people is marked by Va, which gives you Bawakanda, the people of Wakanda. One fun thing about this is that I could use it to come up with some etymologies for the words in Black Panther lore. Take Kimoyo beats for example.
Give me a Kimoyo beat.
The Lugungu word for spirit is Moyo, and the word for bead is Lukwanzi. So I changed the word class of Lukwanzi so it uses the prefix ki, and made Moyo an adjective in Luwakanda. Since adjectives share the same prefix as the nouns they modify, a Kimoyo bead became Kikwanzi Gimoyo, bead of the spirit. But since the plural form uses the prefix vi, then Kimoyo beads would be Vikwanzi Vimoyo. And I think my favorite is the motto for the Kingdom of Wakanda. There were a few expressions in Lugungo that mean forever that I could have used, but I chose Kura na Kura. I chose to have this term shortened due to common usage, so the expression became Wakanda Nkura.
Wakanda forever!
Anyway, that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this is a look into a project that I loved and that I am very proud of. I actually got into linguistics because of my fascination with constructing languages, so being able to do this for university credits was a dream come true. If you're interested in reading the thesis, the link is in the description. Please like, share, subscribe, all that stuff that helps support the channel. I've been Ken Kwame, and I'll see you next time.